The first hit didn't land on my face. It landed on my dignity. Because the moment I knocked, one simple knock, my son didn't just refuse me. He performed my humiliation. I was standing on his porch with my stomach twisting, my knees weak, sweat cold at my spine, and my hand pressed against my side like I could hold my body together through sheer will. The streetlight buzzed overhead, and the wind kept lifting the hem of my coat like it wanted to expose how shaky I really was. I didn't come for money. I didn't come to argue. I came for the most basic thing a mother should never have to beg for. Please, can I use your bathroom? From behind the door, my son's voice exploded like he'd been waiting for an audience. Wait outside like a dog, old woman! The words punched through the wood and hit me harder than any slap could have. A second later, I heard it. His wife's laugh. Not a nervous laugh. Not an awkward laugh. A satisfied one. Then the deadbolt clicked. That sound is so small, but it can split a life in half. I stood there frozen, like my feet forgot how to move. My hand stayed raised, knuckles still hovering near the door like I might knock again, like I might pretend I didn't hear him call me a dog. Across the street, a porch camera blinked red. 2 neighbors were walking a little white dog, and the woman slowed down just enough to glance at me. The man whispered something and smirked. My son wanted this. He wanted me seen. I swallowed, because my throat felt too tight to hold a single word without cracking. I made my face go calm, smooth, polite, blank, like I'd been trained to do it my whole life. Because mothers don't make scenes, right? We absorb scenes. We become the scene. I stepped down from his porch slowly, one careful step at a time, as if moving too fast might tear me open. I kept my chin lifted, even as my stomach cramped so hard I had to press my palm against it. Wait outside like a dog. I repeated it in my head like a cruel prayer. I'd changed his diapers. I'd held his fevered head in the night. I'd sat in waiting rooms, prayed in silence, worked double shifts, skipped meals so he could eat. And now, this. A sharp wave of nausea rolled through me. I turned slightly away from the street so no one could see my eyes water. Then I did the one thing my son never expected. I smiled. Not a sweet smile, not a forgiving smile, a controlled one. The kind a woman wears when she decides she will survive the moment and remember every detail, because that wasn't the first door. It was the first public one. And before the afternoon ended, I would be standing over a truth so heavy my son's face would drain of color while he slept, thinking he'd gotten away with it. Let me tell you what happened, but first, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story travels, because what my son did to me that morning, what he shouted through that door, could have broken me permanently. Instead, it gave me clarity. The knock that started it all happened 3 weeks earlier, on a day that began with sickness and ended with betrayal. I woke up before sunrise with my mouth dry and my body aching like someone had poured sand into my joints. The room smelled faintly of menthol because I'd rubbed ointment on my chest, trying to calm the cough that wouldn't let me sleep. My phone sat on the nightstand with the screen face down, like even it was tired of bringing bad news. The truth is, I hadn't been well in a long time. My husband had been gone for years. My friends had their own lives. And my children, my grown children, had become something I didn't recognize. They called less. They visited less. When they did show up, it wasn't to ask how I was. It was to ask what I had, what I could give. I tried to be honest with myself. Maybe I'd spoiled them. Maybe I'd patched every consequence so quickly they never learned what it felt like to stand on their own. But nothing prepares a mother for the day her own child speaks to her like she is trash that wandered too close to the front door. That morning, I stood in my kitchen, shaking as I poured myself water. My hand trembled so badly the glass clinked against the counter, and I had to steady it with both palms. My stomach turned again, sharp and deep, and I leaned on the sink. Something was wrong. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't the type to run to hospitals for every ache. But this felt different, like my body was waving a red flag and my pride was trying to ignore it. I did what most mothers do when they're scared. I reached for the person who once reached for me. My son. Not the one behind that door. Not yet. I called my oldest first, because she lived closest, and she loved to brag about being the responsible one. The phone rang. Once. Twice. She answered with a sigh like I was an interruption. Mom, what is it? My voice came out weaker than I wanted. Honey, I'm not feeling well. I'm dizzy. My stomach. Something's not right. Could you take me to urgent care? There was silence. Then a sharp exhale. Mom, I have meetings. Real meetings. I can't just drop everything because you feel off. Take an Uber. An Uber. Like I was a package. I tried again. Softer. I'm scared. I don't think I should. Mom, she snapped. You're always scared. You'll be fine. Drink water. Bye. And she hung up. The call ended, but the humiliation stayed in the air like smoke. I stood there staring at my own reflection in the dark microwave door, seeing a woman who looked older than she felt. I pressed my hand to my stomach again, and I realized something that hurt more than the nausea. If I collapsed today, how long would it take for them to notice? That was the beginning. And by the time I reached my second child, I learned the truth wasn't just neglect. It was cruelty. Because what happened behind that bathroom door wasn't a slip. It wasn't stress. It was a glimpse of how they truly saw me. And that afternoon, while my son slept, thinking he'd won, I made a decision that would change the balance of power in this family forever. After my oldest hung up on me, I stood frozen in my kitchen like the floor had turned to glass. The sunlight was just starting to creep through the blinds, and it made thin, pale stripes across my hands. Hands that had worked for decades and were now shaking like they didn't belong to me. I tried to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. But my stomach tightened again, and I had to grip the counter until the wave passed. A normal mother would call an ambulance, but mothers like me, mothers who have spent a lifetime making themselves smaller for everyone else, don't call ambulances first. They call family. They call the people they raised. So I called my second child, my middle son, the one who cared about appearances more than anything. He answered on the third ring, voice clipped, already impatient. Mom, what's going on? I forced calm into my tone. I'm not feeling well. Can you take me to urgent care? I think I need someone with me. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't ask where I was. He asked one question, and it told me everything. Is it serious? I don't know, I admitted. I'm dizzy. My stomach is hurting. I'm sweating and... He cut me off with a groan. Mom, I'm literally leaving for work. I have a presentation. Do you know how it looks if I show up late because you needed bathroom help? Bathroom help. I swallowed hard. I'm not asking you to help me in the bathroom. I'm asking you to take me to the doctor. A pause. Then he lowered his voice like someone might overhear his shame. Mom, you should have planned better. Planned better. As if sickness checks calendars. My fingers went numb around the phone. I raised you boys alone. I planned everything. I'm just asking for one ride. He sighed, annoyed like I was bargaining in a store. Listen, I can send you $50 for an Uber, okay? That's the best I can do right now. And please don't call me again this morning. I need to focus. I stared at the wall as if it might explain how my own child could treat me like a problem to manage. He hadn't even offered to check on me later. Just $50, like a tip, like hush money. Okay, I whispered. He hung up fast. 2 calls, 2 rejections, 2 direct stabs to the heart of a mother who had given everything. I stood there, fighting the urge to cry. Not because I was weak, but because crying felt like confirming what they already believed, that I was a burden. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and walked to the living room. My purse was on the chair where I always left it. I opened it and stared at what was inside. A few receipts, a spare key, a small worn envelope with medical paperwork I'd kept, just in case. And at the bottom, something I hadn't touched in years. A slim folder, the kind you keep important things in when you've lived long enough to learn that papers can protect you better than people can. I pulled it out and laid it on the coffee table. Inside were copies of things I never talked about with my children. Property documents, insurance policies, trust papers, and a notarized letter I'd written but never mailed. Not because I was plotting, because I was preparing. When you're a mother who built her life from nothing, you learn that people change when money enters the room. Even your own kids, especially your own kids. That morning, with my stomach still twisting and my hands still shaking, I looked at that folder and made a quiet decision. If my children saw me as a problem, then I would stop trying to prove my worth through pleading. I would prove it through truth. but I needed to know the truth first. I needed to know which of my children still had a human heart when they thought I had nothing left. So I did something that might sound crazy. I set a test, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted clarity. Because if I ever truly got sick, if something happened and I couldn't protect myself, then I needed to know who would stand beside me and who would step over me. I waited until my body calmed enough to move. I drank water in small sips. I took a mild pain reliever. I sat still until the dizziness faded from a roar to a hum. Then I changed my clothes, not into something fancy, not into something that screamed comfort. I put on an old cardigan with a loose thread on the sleeve. I wore shoes that looked tired. I didn't brush my hair perfectly. I let myself look like what I felt: unsteady, ordinary, unimportant. And I made sure the folder stayed hidden, tucked deep in my bag where no one could see it. Because the test only works if they think you are powerless. I drove slowly, carefully, to my second son's house first. Not the one who yelled at me later, but the one who offered $50 like a bribe. His neighborhood was clean, manicured, and quiet. The kind of place where people wave but don't mean it. His driveway was full. 2 cars. Visitors? Good. Witnesses. I parked at the curb and sat for a moment, breathing through the tightness in my stomach. My hands still trembled, but I steadied them on the steering wheel. Then I got out and walked up to his door. Each step felt heavier than it should have. My chest tightened, not from illness, but from dread. I knocked. The door opened just a crack, and my son looked me up and down like I was an embarrassment that had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. "Mom?" His eyes flicked over my messy hair, my old cardigan, my pale face. "What are you doing here?" I swallowed. "I'm sick. I called you. I need to use the bathroom, and I need someone to take me to urgent care." His expression sharpened, not with concern, with panic. Not panic for me, panic for himself. He glanced behind him, as if checking who might hear. Then he opened the door just enough to shove something into my hand. A crumpled bill. "Here, take this. Go somewhere else," he muttered. "My neighbors are here. Please don't do this right now." I looked down at the bill. $50. The same amount he offered over the phone. He wasn't helping me. He was trying to buy me out of his life. And that's when I realized the bathroom door was just the next level of the same cruelty. Because when I knocked on the next house, my son didn't hand me $50. He handed me humiliation. And you're about to see why what happened that afternoon, he slept, wasn't an accident. It was a consequence. I didn't even feel the cold at first. That's the strange thing about humiliation. It burns so hot inside you that the weather becomes irrelevant. I stood on my middle son's walkway with that crumpled $50 bill in my hand, my stomach rolling like a storm, and my throat locked so tight I couldn't even swallow properly. His door was already closed again, his voice already gone behind the wood like he'd erased me with one movement. And for a moment, I actually considered driving myself to urgent care. I could have. I still had enough strength. My car still ran. My phone still worked. But this wasn't just about my stomach anymore. This was about something deeper. Something that had been rotting quietly in our family for years. Because if my own children could look at me shaking and pale and still treat me like a threat to their image, then I needed to know the full truth. I needed to know which of them still had a soul when they thought I was nothing but a problem. So I drove to my third child, my son Aaron. Aaron was the one who always claimed he was honest, the one who bragged that he didn't sugarcoat anything. He dressed it up like a virtue, like cruelty was just confidence. He lived in a newer neighborhood, but not as flashy as my oldest daughters. Still, everything looked carefully curated: perfect lawn lines, expensive patio furniture, a porch camera angled right at the driveway like a warning. I parked and sat there for 10 seconds, breathing slowly. In, out. My stomach twisted again. And this time the nausea climbed higher, sharper. I pressed my palm against my side and forced myself to step out of the car. The walk to his door felt longer than it should have. I could hear voices inside. A TV. Laughter. People were home. Good. If he was going to reject me, I wanted it real. Not private. Not deniable. I stepped up and knocked. 1 knock. 2. The laughter inside didn't stop. Then the door opened suddenly, hard, like it was thrown. Aaron stood there with a half smile, like he'd already decided I was ridiculous. "Mom?" His eyebrows lifted. "What's this?" I kept my voice low and calm. "I'm not feeling well. I asked your brother for help and he—" I swallowed. "I need to use the bathroom, and I need someone to take me to urgent care." The smile slipped, not into concern, into disgust. He looked me up and down in one fast sweep. The cardigan, my pale face, the way my hand kept pressing my stomach like I was trying not to fold. Then he turned his head slightly and yelled into the house, "Babe, my mom's here acting sick again." Acting, like I was performing. A woman's laugh floated from inside. His wife, Dana. I'd never liked Dana, not because of jealousy or petty reasons, because Dana enjoyed power. She enjoyed watching people bend. Aaron leaned one elbow against the doorframe, blocking the entrance like a bouncer. I said again, quieter, "Aaron, I really need the bathroom." He scoffed. Then, with his voice suddenly louder, loud enough for the living room, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, he said, "Wait outside like a dog, old woman." For a second, I didn't process it. My brain tried to reject the words the way the body rejects poison. Then the meaning hit. Wait outside, like a dog. Old woman. My face went hot. My ears rang. And behind him, Dana laughed again, louder this time, like she'd been rewarded. "Oh my God," she said, still laughing. "Aaron, stop. You're so mean." But her tone wasn't offended. It was delighted. I felt my stomach tighten violently, and I realized with a cold wave of terror that my body might betray me right there on his porch, right where he wanted me to be small. I pressed my palm harder against my side and forced my voice out. "Aaron," I said carefully, "I raised you. I held you when you were sick. I'm not asking for comfort. I'm asking for a bathroom." He leaned forward a little, eyes sharp. "You raised me, yeah, and you also spoiled us, Mom. You made us soft. Then you complain we don't care the way you want. Listen, this isn't a nursing home. I'm not dealing with this right now." Then he tilted his chin toward the side yard like he was pointing at a trash bin. "There's a hose back there. If you're that desperate, handle it." A hose. I stood there frozen, hearing my own heart pounding like it was trying to escape. And then I noticed something that made it worse. Across the street, a neighbor's curtain moved. Someone was watching. Aaron saw it too, and he straightened, louder, like he wanted the street to hear. "I'm not letting you in. You're always dramatic. Go home." And then the final humiliation. He smirked and said, "Or go bother your favorite child, the one you'll leave everything to." It wasn't true, but it was revealing, because in his mind, love was a transaction. And if I wasn't paying, I wasn't welcome. My stomach cramped again, harder, and I turned my face slightly away so he wouldn't see my eyes glass over. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I did the one thing he didn't expect. I nodded, a small, polite nod, like he'd just told me the weather. "Okay," I said softly. "Thank you." His smirk faltered. Just for a second. Because cruel people hate when you don't crumble. I stepped off his porch carefully, each movement controlled. My legs felt weak, but I walked straight. I didn't rush. I didn't stumble. And when I reached my car, I didn't drive away immediately. I sat there with my hands on the wheel, breathing through the nausea, staring at the porch camera blinking. Then I opened my purse and touched the hidden folder. My fingers rested on the edge of the papers like they were a weapon. Because now I knew something. This wasn't just neglect. This was contempt. And if Aaron was willing to call me a dog when I was sick, then Aaron was going to learn what happens when the person you humiliate has receipts. That afternoon, while he slept, he would lose the thing he valued most: control. But first, there was one more door. One last child, the one they all ignored. The one they called the failure, and the only one who still knew what a mother was. I didn't drive far, just far enough that if anyone looked out their window, they wouldn't see me sitting there, breathing like I'd just run a mile. My stomach was still twisting, and the dizziness was back, heavier now. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel for a second and closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to go home and crawl into bed. Part of me wanted to drive straight to a clinic and let strangers treat me with more kindness than my own children. But the bigger part of me, the part that had survived harder things than this, kept whispering, one more door, one more truth. So I started the car and drove to my youngest, Eli. Eli was the one they mocked, the one they called too soft, too poor, not ambitious. Eli was a public school teacher. He lived in a smaller part of town where the lawns weren't perfect and the fences leaned a little. The houses looked lived in, not staged. When I pulled up, my chest tightened for a different reason. Not dread, hope. It scared me because hope is fragile when you've been rejected 3 times. I parked and sat still for a moment. Then another wave hit, sharp and urgent. This time I knew I wasn't going to make it much longer without a bathroom. My hands trembled as I stepped out, and I forced myself to walk quickly but quietly, like if I moved too fast, I might lose control in front of the world. I knocked. Immediately, I heard footsteps. Not slow, not annoyed. Quick. The door opened wide. Eli's face changed the moment he saw me. "Mom?" he said, voice dropping. "What's wrong?" No sarcasm. No delay. His eyes went straight to my pale skin, my shaking hands, the way my body was angled like I was bracing against pain. I need the bathroom," I whispered. "And I think I need a doctor." He didn't ask questions. He stepped back and held the door open like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Come in. Right now. Bathroom's right there. I'll grab water." I made it to the bathroom just in time. I won't describe anything graphic, but I will tell you this. When you're sick and humiliated, the body feels like it's surrendering in a place you never wanted to surrender. And when I came out a few minutes later, my face still hot with shame, I expected to see a look of disgust. Instead, Eli was standing in the kitchen holding a glass of water in both hands like it mattered, like I mattered. "Sit," he said gently. "Please, sit down." I lowered myself onto a chair, still weak, still trembling. The chair was old, scuffed at the legs. The table had homework papers on it and a half-finished science project. A real home, not a show. From the hallway, a woman appeared. Eli's wife, Marisol, and my stomach tightened again. Not from pain this time, because Marisol and we didn't get along, not in the way people assume. Jealousy, control, petty fights. No, I didn't like Marisol because she didn't come from money, and I worried Eli would struggle. I worried love would become hardship, and I'll admit it, I judged her. I wasn't proud of it, but it was true. Marisol looked at me for one long second. Then she walked straight to me and touched my shoulder softly. "Are you okay?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, real. I couldn't answer fast enough. Eli set the water down and crouched beside me like I was something precious. "Mom, why didn't you call me first?" he asked, pain in his eyes like he already knew the answer. I swallowed. Because how do you tell your youngest child the truth? That you didn't call him first because you assumed he had the least to give? Because you believed the lie your other children told you? Eli was the weak one. I cleared my throat. "I did call others," I said quietly. Eli's jaw tightened. He didn't ask who. He already knew. Marisol didn't say, "I told you so." She just moved around the kitchen, opening cabinets, pulling out crackers, heating something simple like soup. No performance, no judgment, just care. Eli took my hand, and held it the way he used to when he was 5 years old and afraid of thunderstorms. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "We'll get you checked out. If you need to stay here tonight, you stay here." My throat burned, because those words, those simple words, were what the others couldn't give me. Permission to exist. I forced a small smile. "I don't want to be a burden." Eli shook his head hard. "Don't say that. You're my mom." And then, because life loves timing, I heard it. Whispers. Soft voices from the kitchen. Eli thought I was too exhausted to notice. Marisol thought I was focusing on the soup. But I heard every word. Marisol whispered, "We don't have much in the account." Eli whispered back, "I know." A pause. Then Marisol said, almost breaking, We could sell the ring if we have to." Just until she's okay. My breath caught. Their wedding ring. Eli said, "If it keeps Mom safe, I'll sell it today." I sat very still, staring down at my hands. Because in my other children's homes, I was a public embarrassment. In this small home, I was a person worth sacrificing for. And right then, I understood something sharp and clear. My family's problem wasn't money. It was character. The rich ones had comfort. But the poor one had love. Eli came back to me with the soup, trying to smile like it was normal. "Eat a little," he said. I took a spoonful, and I decided something. I wasn't going to punish Eli for being kind. I was going to protect him, because when the truth dropped later, when my other children realized what they'd done, Eli would become their target. The favorite, the manipulator, the poor son who got lucky. They would try to twist kindness into greed. So I needed to move carefully, and I needed to move fast, because back across town, Aaron was still smug, still convinced he'd won, still believing I was powerless. And that afternoon, while he slept, I was going to make sure he woke up to a reality where the porch camera didn't protect him. Paperwork did. And the first signature would be placed before sundown. That afternoon, Eli insisted I lie down on the couch. Not because he wanted me out of the way, because he was scared. He tried to hide it behind calm movements, adjusting a blanket, setting a glass of water on the table, checking my forehead like he'd seen people do in movies. But I could see it in his eyes. The panic he didn't want to hand to me. "I'm calling a doctor," he said quietly. "A clinic. We'll do this right." I nodded like I agreed, but I didn't. Not yet, because I wasn't just sick. I was awake, more awake than I'd been in years. And while Eli moved around the kitchen, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the house breathe. Small sounds, real sounds. The hum of the fridge, a neighbor's dog barking once, the soft tap of Marisol's spoon against a pot. This place wasn't big, but it was honest. And the moment I realized Eli was willing to sell his wedding ring to feed me, something inside me locked into place. I wasn't going to let my youngest pay the price for my older children's cruelty. Not with money, not with shame, not with more sacrifice. So when Eli finally stepped outside to take a call, his voice low on the porch, I slid my hand into my purse, and I pulled out the folder. The folder I'd been carrying all day. The reason I didn't go to urgent care first. The reason I let my pride take hits I didn't deserve. Inside were copies of documents most families never talk about until it's too late. A revised trust addendum, a power of attorney update, a beneficiary change form that didn't require anyone's permission except mine, and a letter, written cleanly, calmly, explaining why. Not a rant, not a revenge speech, a record, a paper trail. Because the kind of children who humiliate their mother don't fear tears, they fear proof. I sat up slowly, my stomach still sore, but my hands steady. I opened my phone and texted one person. "Robert, I need you today. Not tomorrow. Today." Robert was my attorney, not a TV lawyer, not a dramatic courtroom figure. A quiet professional who'd handled my finances for years and never missed a detail. He replied within 1 minute. "Where are you?" I sent the address. Then I added one more line. "Bring a notary." When Eli came back inside, he looked relieved. "Clinic said they can see you in an hour," he said. "We'll go together." "Marisol can—" "Eli," I interrupted softly. He froze like he thought I was about to say something scary. "I'm okay," I said. "I'm weak. I'm sick. But I'm okay." He blinked. "Mom, you don't look okay." I gave him a small smile. "I'm not okay in the way you think. I'll explain soon." Marisol stepped into the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "Is she going?" she asked. I looked at her. Really looked. And I chose honesty. "Not yet," I said. "First, I need to handle something." Eli's face tightened. "What?" I exhaled slowly. "The way they treated me today," I said quietly. "Your siblings." Eli's eyes dropped. He didn't deny it. He didn't defend them. He just nodded once, like he'd expected it. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know," I replied. "But I need you to hear something clearly." He looked up. "I'm not here to start a war," I said. "I'm here to stop one. Permanently." Marisol set the towel down and sat across from me. She didn't speak. She just watched, steady. I opened the folder and slid it across the table. Eli stared at the papers like they were a language he didn't understand. "Mom," he whispered, almost scared. "What is this?" "This," I said, tapping the top page, "is me making sure the people who treat me like trash don't control what happens next." Eli swallowed. "You mean inheritance?" I nodded. "I didn't come here today thinking I'd do this," I admitted. But then I heard what you were willing to give up for me. Eli's eyes widened. Mom, don't... Listen, I said firmly. He went still. I'm not rewarding you for being poor, I said. I'm not punishing them for being rich. I'm doing one thing. I leaned forward. I'm protecting the only home that's still open to me. Marisol's face softened slightly, like the words landed in a place she'd been guarding. Eli's voice cracked. I don't want their money. It's not their money, I said calmly. It's mine. Then I paused, letting silence do what it does best. Tell the truth without noise. Eli looked down at his hands, and when he spoke again, his voice was smaller. They were always like this, he admitted. They just hide it better around crowds. I nodded. Today they didn't hide. A car pulled up outside. 2 knocks followed, firm and professional. Eli stood quickly. Who was that? My attorney, I said. His eyes widened again. Mom. Trust me, I said, gently but final. Eli opened the door. Robert stepped in, suit neat, expression calm. Behind him stood a woman with a notary stamp case. Robert glanced at me once and immediately understood the room. He didn't ask if I was sure. He asked what I wanted. I pointed at the papers. We sign, I said. Eli turned pale. Mom, he whispered, this is extreme. I looked at him and my voice softened. No, I said. What happened to me today was extreme. Then I added, quieter, and I'm done pretending it wasn't. Robert laid the documents out on the table with the calm precision of someone who knew that real power is silent. The notary checked my ID. I signed. One signature, then another, then another. Each one felt like closing a door that had been left open too long, letting poison into my life. When it was done, Robert slid the final page toward me. Acknowledgement letter, he said. The explanation. I read it once. Then I signed. And just like that, the balance shifted. Not with yelling, not with vengeance. With ink. Robert gathered the documents and nodded. Filed digitally within the hour. Hard copies overnight. You're protected. Eli sat down slowly, like his knees forgot how to hold him. Marisol exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. I stood, carefully, stomach still aching, but spine straight. Now, I said, we go to the clinic. Eli looked up at me, overwhelmed. Mom, what happens when they find out? I met his eyes. I didn't smile. Tonight, I said softly, they'll sleep thinking nothing changed. I walked past him toward the door. And tomorrow, I finished, they'll wake up to consequences. Because that afternoon, while my son Aaron slept, I made sure he could never call me a dog again without paying for it. The clinic visit confirmed what I already felt in my bones. My body was under strain, dehydration, a stomach infection. Nothing life-ending, but enough that any normal family would have insisted I rest, would have stayed beside me, would have treated me like a mother instead of a nuisance. Eli drove with both hands locked on the steering wheel like he was carrying something fragile. Because he was. Not just me. The truth. When we got back to his house, it was evening. The sky outside turned that bruised gray blue that makes everything feel heavier. Marisol set out a clean pillow and a fresh blanket. Eli placed the medicine on the table next to me and sat down like he didn't know what else to do with his hands. Are you okay? He asked again, softer now. I will be, I said. Then I added the part he needed to hear. Because you let me in. He swallowed, eyes shining. He looked away quickly, ashamed of the emotion. I didn't push. I just let silence sit there like a witness. My phone buzzed around 9:17 p.m. A message from my oldest daughter, Serena. Where are you? Aaron said you're causing drama again. Not, are you okay? Not, do you need help? Drama. I stared at the words, then set the phone face down. Eli noticed. Don't answer, he said quietly, like he was protecting me from them. I nodded, but I already had a plan. Because people like Serena and Aaron don't stop when you go quiet. They get louder. They need a reaction to prove they still control the story. So I waited. At 10:03 p.m., another message. This time from Aaron. If you're trying to guilt us, it won't work. Don't come back here. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so predictable. Eli's face twisted in pain when he saw it. Mom, I'm sorry, he whispered. I looked at him and shook my head. No, I said. You don't apologize for them anymore. He blinked. What? I leaned forward slightly, voice calm and clear. You've been carrying their shame for years, I said. You don't carry it anymore. Marisol stood in the doorway listening. She didn't interrupt. She just watched Eli's face, like she'd waited a long time for someone to tell him that. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Robert, I answered. Everything is filed, he said. And, just so you're prepared, someone already tried to access information. My stomach tightened. Who? I asked. He paused, then said the name like it didn't surprise him at all. Aaron. Eli's head snapped up. Robert continued. He called the office, tried to confirm some details about your estate and your medical status. He used the phrase, capacity concerns. Capacity. That word landed like a slap. Because it wasn't concern, it was strategy. It was the first step people take when they want to control an older person's money. Imply she's confused, unstable, not competent. Eli's face went white. Marisol's hand lifted to her mouth. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Then I opened them, and all the softness drained out of my voice. Thank you, I said. What did you tell him? I told him nothing, Robert replied. I told him any communication must be in writing, and I reminded him you have full legal capacity and representation. Good. Because now it was clear, Aaron didn't just want to humiliate me, he wanted to manage me, own me, like property. I hung up and stared at my phone. Eli's voice was shaking. He's trying to say you're not okay in the head? I looked at Eli, and I saw something I hadn't seen all day. Rage. Not childish anger. Adult rage. The kind that rises when someone finally understands the shape of the abuse. Yes, I said calmly. He is. Eli stood up, pacing, hands running through his hair. That's insane, he muttered. Mom, that's evil. I didn't correct him, because he was right. And then the next message came. Serena again. If you're sick, go to a hospital. Don't drag us into it. Eli turned toward me. Let me call them. Let me tell them off. I lifted a hand. No, I said. We don't fight the way they fight. He froze. I reached for the folder's empty space on the table, like my hand remembered where it had been. We don't scream, I said quietly. We document. Then I looked at Eli and Marisol. I'm going to do one thing tonight, I said. And then I want you both to sleep. Marisol frowned. What thing? I picked up my phone, and I recorded a short voice memo. Calm, clear, dated, my location, my condition. The names of each child I asked for help. The exact words Aaron said. Wait outside like a dog. No dramatics, just truth. Then I sent it to Robert, with one line. For the record, in case they escalate. Eli stared at me like he was seeing me as a full person for the first time. Not just mom, but a woman with boundaries. Marisol's eyes softened. Smart, she whispered. I didn't answer, because the real moment wasn't in that kitchen. It was coming the next morning. At 8:11 a.m., my phone buzzed like an alarm. Robert again. They've been notified, he said. They can't claim ignorance. Okay, I replied. And he paused. Expect a reaction. I ended the call. Eli and Marisol were already awake, waiting, like their bodies knew something was about to happen. At 8:26 a.m., Serena called. I put it on speaker and set the phone on the table. Mother, she said. Cold, controlled. What did you do? I didn't answer right away. I let silence stretch long enough that she could feel the shift. Then I said softly, I protected myself. Her voice sharpened. Aaron says your lawyer called him. He says you... I did, I said. What did you sign? She demanded. I looked at Eli, then back at the phone. I signed papers that make sure no one who humiliates me gets to control me, I said. Serena's breath hitched, angry. Then a new voice cut in. Aaron. He must have been right there with her, loud enough to be heard. You're doing this because you're mad about yesterday? He snapped. You're sick. You're emotional. I interrupted him, still calm. No, I said. I did this because yesterday showed me who you are when you think I'm weak. He scoffed. You're being dramatic. I turned my head slightly, like I was talking to a child who wouldn't listen. Aaron, I said. You told me to wait outside like a dog. Silence. A long, ugly silence. Then Serena hissed, "Why would you say that?" Aaron's voice lowered, defensive. "I didn't mean it like that." I almost smiled. Not because he was sorry, because the mask was slipping. I leaned closer to the phone. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "You will not contact my attorney again. You will not mention capacity again. You will not attempt to access anything again." Aaron started to speak. I cut him off, voice still quiet but steel underneath. "If you do," I said, "you'll be speaking to a judge." Silence again. Then Serena's voice softened. Fake. "Mother, we can talk about this. Come home. No," I said. And I meant it. "I'm with the people who treated me like family," I said. "I'm staying here until I'm fully well." Eli looked down, overwhelmed. Marisol's hand slid onto his shoulder, steadying him. Aaron exhaled sharply. "So you're choosing him." I answered with a truth that felt like sunlight. "I'm choosing kindness," I said. Then I ended the call. No screaming, no threats. Just the door closing, quietly, on a lifetime of entitlement. Eli whispered, "They're going to hate me." I looked at him and shook my head. "No," I said. "They'll hate the consequences. That's different." Then I stood, slow but steady, and walked to the window. Across town, my rich children were waking up to a world where cruelty didn't come free. And in this small house, this honest house, the people I once doubted were the ones who saved me. Marisol didn't ask for praise. Eli didn't ask for reward. They just opened the door. And if you're listening right now, if you've ever been humiliated by the people who should have protected you, remember this. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they share your last name. You owe yourself safety, dignity, proof, and a future that isn't controlled by people who only love you when you're useful. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been treated like a burden by your own family? And if you made it to the end, subscribe, because the next story is even harder and even more satisfying. Because sometimes the loudest justice is the one you sign in silence.